Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning. So, I believe it is 10:30 and welcome to Lincolnshire County Council Planning and Regulation Committee. It's the 6th of July. This is the first virtual meeting of the County Planning Committee. So I don't know if it's going to go well or not. We'll wait and see. With everybody's agreement, I am going to vary the agenda slightly in that I'm going to take item 6 and specifically 6.1 first, because we have a speaker, Caroline Hainsworth, who has some other business she needs to go to. She's present at the moment, so we'll deal with that application first and then rewind back to traffic items. But first of all, I'm going to deal with item 1, which is apologies replacement members. So in order to deal with this, I'm going to do a roll call. And with regard to this, I would like members to unmute their microphones and potentially turn their videos on and just say something like present or good morning, Chairman, to say that they are present. So, starting off, first of all, obviously I'm the Chairman, Councillor Fleet, but I'm present. Councillor Tom Ashton, are you with us?
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor David Brailsford?
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay Corey?
Present, Chairman. Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Paula Cooper?
Present. Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Killy? I'm trying to think of your first name. Councillor Killy?
Chairman.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, Councillor Robin Renshaw is deputising for Councillor Keeley, and you probably missed Councillor Austin off that list as well, in alphabetical order.
I will, so I'll pick up on Councillor Austin next time, and I will insert Councillor Renshaw in there. So, Councillor Austin, are you with us?
Present. Good morning,
Thank you. Excellent. So, putting Renshaw into that heap. There we go. Lovely. Councillor McNally.
Good morning, Chairman. All present and correct.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Newton.
No, she's not here, Chairman.
Thank you.
Councillor Austin is deputising for her.
She's the deputiser for that one. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Overton.
Present. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper.
Good morning. That makes me present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Present. Good morning, members.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw.
Present, Chairman. Good morning.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Rowe.
Present. Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Present, Chairman. Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Spratt.
No, he's not here, Chairman.
That's a no. Okay. Councillor Storer.
Yeah, present, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. So, Steve, would you like to introduce the officers for me?
Yeah, the officers present, Chairman, are Neil McBride, Head of Planning, Martha Rees, Solicitor, who is accompanied by a trainee solicitor, Mark Willis, the Applications Manager, and Jan Gibson, the Traffic Manager, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And have we missed anybody, or is there anybody else in the meeting that shouldn't be here? I acknowledge that it could be, I think it is Councillor Caroline Hainsworth is here to speak to the Colsterworth application. Is that correct?
And Robert Doughty, Chairman.
And Robert Doughty to the same application.
Yeah. Chairman, can I just deal with the apologies? I know you sort of dealt with them. Shall I just, from a
yes,
constitutional point of view,
please.
Can I just say, Councillor Hilton Spratt gave his apologies this morning, Chairman. He's had to attend their family funeral at a short notice. Councillor Alison Austin has been appointed to the committee in place of Councillor Angela Newton for this meeting only. Councillor Paula Cooper has been appointed to the committee in place of the late Councillor Lewis Strange until further notice. and Councillor Robin Renshaw has been appointed to the committee in place of Councillor Julie Kelly for this meeting only. Chairman, thank you.
Good, excellent, thank you very much. So if during the meeting a member would like to ask a question or raise a point, they're requested to use the chat function on their computers and to write speak as a comment, and we will pick up on that, no problems. When invited to speak by me, I will ask you to unmute your microphones and your videos so that people can see and hear you. And obviously when you have finished making your statement, if you turn them off again, that would be appreciated. There is only a certain amount of computer bandwidth, and the more video we have processing, the lower the quality of the images. Similarly, if you are going to leave the meeting or you've left the meeting, please indicate via chat that you are doing so. And if you lose a connection, it's recommended that you end your call using the big red button at the bottom of the phone icon and then rejoin the meeting with the link provided. And indeed, if a member does lose connection, I will pause the meeting for a period to allow the member to rejoin. If the member has not rejoined the meeting by the time I recommence the meeting, the member will be treated as having left the meeting during the period of absence. So I hope that's okay. So we've done the apologies and we've done the replacement members. So item 2 then is declarations of interest. Members are reminded that they only need to declare any relevant interests which have not been declared on their declaration of pecuniary interest forms. If any member would like to declare an interest, please indicate in the chat function by typing speak now. And I have nobody coming through on chat, so I assume there is nobody wishing to make a statement there. So item 3 then is the minutes. And from the chair, I'm going to move the minutes of the meeting of the Planning and Regulation Committee held on the 9th of March as a true and accurate record. Can I have a seconder to my motion? Please indicate for, against or abstain when I've read your name out. So I'm first of all looking for a seconder. And Councillor Pepper, would you like to make your microphone live and your video so you can second?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to second those minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now with this, I need to do a roll call. So I will go down the list again. Councillor Austin, obviously you are part of this meeting. You were part of the other meeting, I believe. Let's think about it. You attended some parts. So are you for or against? Happy?
I would abstain because I wasn't. Should I abstain on these minutes because I was here for the site visit?
Thank you. Okay, you only attended the site. That's excellent. So abstain. So I'm obviously for. Councillor Ashton?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brailsford?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Corey?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Paula Cooper, I think you'll be an abstention.
Yeah, I believe I did this meeting 4.
So you weren't part of the minutes. You weren't part of the last meeting, were you?
I wasn't part of the last meeting. I did one of the site visits, but that's fine.
So
it's
therefore,
abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor McNally.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Overton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Abstain, not present.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw.
Abstain, not present.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Storer.
Yeah, abstain, not present, Chairman.
Excellent. So on the basis of that, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abstentions, 2, 4, 6, 8 people for. So therefore, we can accept those minutes. Obviously, I will sign those when I'm next in the county offices. So moving you on to item 4 then, and this is the minutes of the site visit to the A16B1166 radar junction A16B 1040 junction, Crowland, held on the 13th of March. And I'd like to move acceptance of these minutes for the site visit. Again, please note that only the members who attended the meeting can speak and vote, which is myself, Tom Ashton, Alison Austin, Lindsay Corey, Daniel McNally, Nigel Pepper and Stephen Rowe. So again, I'm going to go through the roll and I'll do a full roll call. Again, if you weren't there, please abstain. So starting first with Councillor Austin. Are you happy with those minutes?
4. Yes.
Thank you. I'm happy with them. Councillor Tom Ashton.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Brailsford.
Abstain, not present.
Thank you. Councillor Corey.
4, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Paula Cooper. I think you're an abstain because you weren't present. Councillor McNally.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Overton.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Abstain, not present.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw.
Abstain, not present.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Abstain, not present.
Thank you. Councillor Storer.
Abstain, not present.
Thank you. So a quick count there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 abstentions. 2, 4, 6, 7 people for. So therefore those minutes are also carried. Okay. So moving you down then on to item 6, because we're now going to deal with the application as I highlighted earlier. We're going to deal with the planning application because of the speakers being available earlier and not later. So item 6 is application for the determination of the new updated conditions to which a mineral site is to be subject, land subject to the Minister of Housing and Local Government decision letters dated 10th of September and 21st of August 1961, reference DA9 and DA11 at proposed Skillington Quarry, land to the east and west of Skillington Road, Colsterworth, Robert Doughty Consultancy being the applicants, and the reference number is S18/2237. So with this, first of all, the planning officer will outline the report. Then Caroline Hainsworth, who is the chairperson of Colsterworth and District Parish Council, will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, allowing for cross-examination for by the committee with pertinent questions only, of course. And also we will then allow Robert Doughty, who's representing the applicant, to either speak or if we have a written statement from either of them, if the communication breaks up, we will take the written communication. So first of all, planning officer, I believe that's Mark. Would you like to introduce the report, please?
I will do. Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, members. As the Chairman says, this application takes us to a proposal at Skillington. It relates to the updating of planning conditions attached to a dormant planning permission that was granted back in the 1950s and 1960s. The applicant has sought to make an application to review those permissions and reactivate workings and put forward an initial review application which sets out the proposals for how that site would be worked and restored, and fundamentally a modern set of planning conditions to which the site would operate. I'll talk through some of the slides which members will see on the screen, have been provided in advance of the meeting as well, and there's some photos and I'll talk you through some of those. In terms of the first slide, this is just a general location plan, give you a broad idea of the location development. The red line plan denotes the extent of the actual mineral permissions as they stand. The area of working, which will be clarified later, is focused on one small part of this area, and so no further working is proposed in areas outside of that. Areas to just note on here is the site's location is virtually centrally located between the village of Stainby to the south Woolsthorpe to the east, and Skillington to the north. We've got Buckminster further to the west. On this general location plan, you'll see the A1, which runs down in this corridor here, and this is the B676 running through Colesworth. Again, this is just another slide showing the area. So the extent of the mineral permissions, as we said, covers two permission numbers, DA9 and DA11. This is the footprint of the old permissions as they stand. To put it in context, this area actually now has been superseded by virtue of a landfill permission and a quarry. These areas have previously been worked out and restored. So whilst they're still covered by the permission, there's no further working or prospect of working within those areas. So the main focus of this proposal is this field here to the south. In terms of the proposal, the proposal is to work, as I say, this field and effectively in three broad phases. It would work effectively in those phases, progressively moving west to east, with an extraction of the limestone at around a rate of 120,000 tonnes per year. Expected yield of around 2 million tonnes of limestone would be removed from the site, which equates to around 22 HGVs per day. The area, as shown on here, is an area that's within the proposal site, but isn't proposed to be worked. This area contains some archaeological areas of interest, and so would be remaining in situ. So there'll be a provision that that area is unworked. Things to note on this plan: there is an existing public right-of-way, which is referenced in the report, that runs along the southern aspect of the site here. And the proposed site entrance is currently here as a field access, which provides access to a field barn there. Throughout the report, I'll mention Woolsthorpe Road. It's this section here, though, is actually, I think it's an unnamed road, but for the purposes of clarification, really, for this report, I'll refer to it as Woolsthorpe Road.
Okay.
Okay, so the next slide, just I won't skim through these, but these are just the working plans, and I appreciate you can't quite see the detail on here, but it broadly gives you an indication of the phase working. The area of phase one will be the western extent of the site, and as the operations advance, you'll see as I slide through these, the blue area denotes the working area. So as the operations advance, you can see it moves further eastwards with progressive restoration following behind. The restoration itself would be to a mixture of low-level agriculture with some nature conservation benefits as part of the scheme, providing a mixture of after uses. So taking you on to the report, as I say, the application itself, the report itself sets out the proposals in more detail in terms of the proposed extent of working, area of working. The application is also accompanied by an environmental statement, so it considers a range of topics and technical assessments to support the proposal and to consider the potential impacts on any mitigation identified. Those findings are summarised on page 55 to 63 of the report. In terms of the policy, whilst this isn't an application for planning permission so much as permission already exists, it's still relevant to consider the proposal against development plan policies. So you'll see in the report on pages 64 to 67, consideration has still been given to those policies in terms of how the proposals comply or meet those criteria. The development plan in this instance comprises MPPF, local plan, the Minerals and Waste local plan, that is, South Kesteven local plan, and there's also reference to the neighbourhood plans of Colesworth and Skillington. I'll talk you through some of the slides first, and then we'll come back onto the report. Just to put this slide in context, this is a view taken from the southern boundary, looking northwest across to phase one. So the area of the former landfill site is here. So we're on the southern boundary, looking westwards, northwestwards here towards the site. You can see the area is in arable use at this moment in time. This is another view, virtually from the same position, sweeping round now, looking toward across phase two. So this is phase two, and again, so we're further back now. Sorry, and this is phase one in the background there. And this is now a reverse view looking towards Skillington Road, which runs north-south alongside the site, just beyond that hedge line here. So this area in the foreground is phase 3. This is a view on Skillington Road itself at the entry point into the public right-of-way, which, as I say, runs now along this northern side of the hedgerow, but on the southern side of the boundary. So the quarry would effectively be all on the right-hand side of this picture. Just going to sweep around the site now in terms of looking the roads and accesses to it. So this road here is the B6. Oh, sorry, I'll go back. This road here is the B676. It runs from the A1 background here and then towards Stainby. This is the entrance Skillington Road that joins the B676. And this is a view looking north up Skillington Road heading towards the site itself. This is now located roughly in the northeast corner of the site. There's a section of crossroad here. This is Woolsthorpe Road. This is, as I've referred to, the unnamed road, but a continuation of Woolsthorpe Road. The site itself is just to the left here, and this is the landfill area and of the former workings. This is the road that leads into Woolsthorpe itself. And this is a view from that crossroads looking back. So the site is down here, and this would lead towards the site entrance itself on Woolsthorpe Road. As I say, with landfill just to the right there. This is a view of the site entrance that's proposed. As I say, it's a field access currently. As part of the proposals, there'll be a need to carry out some widening works and improvements to this entrance to facilitate access for HGVs. This is a view from that access looking eastwards back towards the crossroad junction we've just looked at. So this is where those last few photos were taken. So traffic potentially can run that side and go back towards Skillington Road. It's a view in the other direction looking effectively northwest towards Crabtree Road, which joins just beyond the photograph here. And this is a view of that junction onto Crabtree Road itself. And you'll see there's reference to, again, improvements required. As you can see, there's some issue here with overrunning. So as part of this proposal, there'll be some improvements proposed as part of this development to facilitate traffic turning in and out of onto Crabtree Road. This is a view looking back at that same junction. Again, this is, you can see, we've just to update the committee, we've had a representation received this morning from the Buckminster estate raising concern about visibility along this access with the overgrown nature of perhaps the vegetation restricting access. I can confirm Highways have looked at this from a visibility point of view, are satisfied that that is a suitable visibility display. In the event that there is vegetation overgrowth on the highway boundary, the powers of the authority do have or require that to be trimmed back. So are satisfied that with those improvements, HGV access does comply with the design manual for roads and bridges standards. Just taking you a little bit further northeast of the site now. This is the crossroads at the top. So this is Crabtree Road. This runs towards the A1 junction itself, and this is Skillington Road. So this is the site is now behind us to the back, and this is another junction arrangement at the top of the site. Again, you can see the crossroads arrangement that's moving towards Buckminster and the site itself. There is an existing Colsworth Triangle quarry itself, which runs and accesses onto this site, onto this road further in the foreground there, in the background, sorry. And this is a view the other way now, looking towards the route that takes you towards the A1. This is along Crabtree Road. This is the junction itself onto the A1 from Crabtree Road. One of the junctions, many junctions onto the A1, but this is the one from Crabtree Road, which has been identified as a possible route for HGVs, and a route that's currently taken by the existing operational quarry in the area. This is a view from that junction looking at the south. So this is the traffic heading northbound towards the junction. You can see the turn off there for vehicles turning onto Crabtree Road. This is a view in the opposite direction, so heading north. So you can see again the slip road arrangement onto the A1. And the next slide shows a bit more clarification. At this point, you can see there is a crossing point, central crossing point along the A1. And you'll see from the report there's been some concerns expressed regarding this from local residents and the parish councils with regard to the safety aspect of utilising this crossing point.
Yeah, we'll have to cross that.
Okay, so in terms of the report, as I say, itself for consultations, they're set out on page 67 to 73. I don't propose to go through them in detail, other than to say point out some of the key ones. We've had a number of representations made from the principal parish councils in the area, including Colesworth, Skillington and Buckminster, which have objected to the proposals on principal issues are about a lack of need for the limestone within the county. The county has sufficient reserves and therefore argued we don't need to open up a new quarry at this time. Traffic impacts, not only in and around the local road network, but as I've mentioned, along the A1 and this particular junction arrangement, and impacts in respective impact on the open countryside, residential amenity, and impacts such as noise and dust. The statutory consultees, no principal objections have been raised to the application. As I say, permission exists, and so in this context, it's about the controls and the conditions for which we're looking to secure on the site. Where comments have been made, then officers have made recommendations for conditions to address those. In terms of public consultation, this application has been a long-standing application. It was first submitted back in 2018, and we received over 100 representations initially to the first round of consultation. Further information was received to address some deficiencies in the information supporting the application and following the previous withdrawal of an associated application, which is mentioned in the background to this report. And you'll see that on top of the representation we received, we'd also had a petition initially. Again, the main issues are set out in the report. I don't propose to go through them in great detail as they are presented there for members. But again, the issues are to do with the lack of need for the facility, the limestone, traffic, and I say environmental damage and concerns such as noise, dust, and impacts on nature. In terms of the conclusions, they're through from page 77 onwards. And again, the report sets out and addresses each of those particular issues in turn relevant to this proposal. In respect of the need argument, as I've said from the outset, this is unlike a normal planning application whereby the committee is being asked to consider granting planning permission. In this case, planning permission exists for those reserves, and this is more of a means to look at the way in which this site may operate and the conditions to which it would operate to. Therefore, it's not necessary for the county to consider the need for release of new reserves, as those reserves are already consented. In respect of landscape and other matters, the applications put in measures of mitigation to address those, such as bunds around the site, phased working, direction of working, and obviously working at depth, which would help to minimise the impacts to an acceptable degree. From a highways perspective, notwithstanding the objections and concerns that have been raised, both using the local road network and also the A1, no objections have been raised from the Highway Authority or, for that matter, the Highways England, who are responsible for the A1. The traffic numbers and the proposed routes around the site have been deemed acceptable given the level of activity, and conditions have also been recommended to deal with other matters such as a wheel wash to minimise debris and materials being brought onto the highway, and also a traffic management plan which would formalise some of the routing around the site, notwithstanding the fact that all of those routes have been deemed acceptable. As I say, some of the other matters, just to note, is there is an area of interest of archaeologists to the north of the site that would be reserved in situ by virtue of a condition confirming no further working in that area. Similarly, any other areas outside of that, which were just shown on the plans, would be restricted from any future working. So this would set a new baseline and identify the extent of the working within this site and this permission. And then finally, conditions are also recommended within the report to deal with the usual matters such as noise and dust, requiring retention of soils to aid restoration, and also further details to deal with restoration scheme itself. So pulling it all together on towards the end of the report on page 85, a series of planning conditions, 34 planning conditions have been recommended that the committee approve as part of this decision, which would control and modernise the existing planning conditions that are attached to the permissions that date from the 1950s and 60s. So it's recommended that the committee approve the conditions as set out on Appendix A of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's a fairly good introduction, to say the least. Thank you for all the pictures. They're very much appreciated, and the plans. It does help us review how the application goes. Now, I have potentially two speakers. The first one is Caroline Hainsworth, the chairperson of Colsterworth and District Parish Council. So I assume you are a councillor. I'll give you the correct title. You are permitted to speak for 3 minutes. There may be a couple of questions following from the committee. So whenever you're ready, the screen is yours. And it's Mark, if you'd like to potentially stop sharing your screen, that will then allow the members to see Caroline. So whenever you're ready, Caroline.
Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, right. I've got it prepared, so I shall read it out. This is representation from the residents in the parish. This is a summary of key points I would urge the committee consider the parish council's representations in full, and most importantly ask, are you content that this will withstand a legal challenge? This application has been controversial and has caused a great deal of concern to residents, which is well documented in public meeting and formal representations. The fundamental objection is that there is no established need to quarry limestone in either quantity or of the quality from this application, and this is in direct contravention of the authority's own mineral and waste plan and Lincolnshire aggregate assessment. It's not sufficiently clear why this framework has specifically not been given the same due weight as the other national policy frameworks, current legislation, local plans. It is considered appropriate, or it is not considered appropriate or acceptable that this framework has been ruled out when considering modern day standards. And it is hoped that committee are satisfied that their own mineral and waste plans should be legitimately excluded from the review. We also believe that the leases and permissions expired several years ago and the ROMP should be rescinded. Has the committee had sight of the original permission letters, or at very least have assurances as to who holds the current and legitimate government licence for extraction from the areas in question, so that this stands up to any legal challenge? The content of a Section 106 agreement should be agreed through the consultation period of the planning application with the relevant parties and planning officer, and most specifically include the parish councils. It is a particular concern that the authority has not recommended this, bearing in mind these are in place at operations such as South Witham. We understand that this is the only way conditions such as a traffic management plan can be enforced. It is therefore our contention that this parish has been denied that opportunity. We would have hoped that with a commercial operation potentially lasting 22 years, we would have at least entered into discussions that would offer some benefit to the community assets and amenities through a 106 agreement. And I understand that this could be recommended by the committee. Whilst the applicants withdrawn the areas DA9 and 11 from this application, the committee is asked to ensure that the area east of the Skillington Road is properly and legally struck out, so that it's clear that the properties within 15 metres of the red line and the old railway line nature trail are no longer at risk. The report before you has made assumptions that there is no fear and intimidation from the traffic issues, and I can assure you that this is not what's being experienced on the ground. I'd urge the committee to review the proposed traffic plan in the officer's report, reference chapter 11, for all areas and not just the entrance and exit to the site and immediate rural roads, to minimise the impact. Thank you, Chair and officers. Thank you.
15 seconds are excellent. You're well within time. So thank you for that. Now, I'm just going to have a quick look at my chat function, see if there's anybody wishing to speak or ask a question of Caroline. Is there anybody there wishing to ask a question of Caroline? If you are, please put something into your chat. Councillor Mrs Overton. So would you like to ask the question, please?
Thank you very much indeed. I didn't quite get that bit about the 106. I think Caroline was saying that she had that their council had not been engaged in the traffic management plan, which is on the table. Can I just confirm what was meant by that? I didn't quite get that. Thank you.
Yes, in response to that, again, this is our understanding because we don't have necessarily that expertise, which is why we look to the authority to perhaps guide on that. We understand, and South Witham's an example, that's why this has been raised, is that in order to actually have an enforced plan, then that is something that's put into a 106 agreement so that it can be monitored properly by the authority, i.e. yourselves. So that's just an understanding that we have about what a Section 106 agreement could actually achieve in terms of traffic management anyway. Because I know there was quite a lot of negotiation at South Witham to resolve some of the issues that the residents had and the site of the quarry, etc. We also have to bear in mind that the current contractors that are actually on site at Skillington may not be the ones that will be actually doing the work. We don't know that, and we do have some sort of tentative relationship with them so that any concerns we can have a direct line to them. So that's very positive, but I'm not sure that we've got a proper framework that will allow us, if this application goes ahead, to actually enforce any issues. So that I think that hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Mrs Evans, did you want to come back?
Sorry, yes, thank you. Thank you, that's very helpful and that does clarify it. But I think you're saying that you're actually happy with the management plan, but you just want to make sure that you have engagement in making sure that the right things happen on the ground in accordance with the plan.
No, we're not happy. No, we're not happy with the actual traffic management plan. I think there's further discussion to be had.
Okay.
Right,
hence the 106 agreement would formalise it. That's where we're suggesting that would help. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Do we have any other speakers or anybody else wishing to ask Caroline a question? No, right, okay, thank you. So if you can now mute your microphone, Caroline, thank you for your speech.
Thank you very much. Can I just say special thank you to Steve Blagg for bearing with me to get me onto this, and to yourself for moving the agenda.
That's very kind of you. We try to look after people as best as we can, and
thank you.
The strange times, we'll do whatever within reason to try and accommodate people.
Thank you. I'll mute now.
Thank you. So now I believe we have Mr. Doughty with us. I don't believe he wishes to speak, but if there are any questions of the applicant, I think he can take them. So if Mr. Doughty is wanting to speak, he's very welcome to.
I haven't got a prepared thing. I can respond on the question about traffic management, if that would be helpful.
Certainly, why not? Yes, please.
Yeah, certainly. There isn't actually a traffic management plan submitted as part of the application. There's a proposed condition 30 that you have on your agenda, which sets out the parameters for a traffic management, the final traffic management plan. And you would normally expect that to be part of a planning condition, which is equally as enforceable in these situations as a Section 106 legal agreement.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Now, does anybody have a question at all of the applicant? I'm giving people fair time on this one. No. So I'm now going to ask the officers if they have any further comments to make before we open it up. I don't believe we have the local member with us. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. So, Officer Mark, do you have any comments to make of?
Just to expand, really, as Mr. Doughty said, yeah, there wasn't necessary to require a routing restriction by way of a unilateral or a 106 agreement in this instance. They're usually used where, for example, traffic regulation orders aren't in place, or where it's felt necessary from a highway and amenity point of view. The advice from highways has been that all the routes that have been identified within this area, given the output, are suitable without the need, therefore, to put restrictions in place via unilateral. So it's not been necessary to put a 106 in place, unlike, for example, at the site of South Witham. And as Mr. Darcy said, we have recommended a condition that would give some more clarification on the actual routes, notwithstanding all of them have been deemed appropriate by way of a condition, and that would be an enforceable condition.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Now, having said that we've no local member present, I'm therefore going to open it to committee, and who would like to open the debate first? If you'd like to put a comment of speak in your chat function, it would be appreciated. It looks like we have silence from the committee. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will speak if no one else is in the queue before me. Having looked at this in considerable detail, I can understand the concerns of local people of this effectively rearing itself after so many years. But my understanding from the report, from the papers, and from the presentation is that the principle of permission was established many years ago under an entirely different planning regime, and sets the policies to what we're working to now. Notwithstanding that, unfortunately, it appears that permission stands, and it's our responsibility as a planning authority to ensure that what happens next is as good as what it can be. And I'm listening to the debate about Section 106 and the traffic conditions that are included. I'll listen to the rest of the debate, but I'm minded to support the application with the conditions that we've got, on the basis that it does represent as thorough an effort as possible to ensure that this development has as minimum an impact as the development here might possibly have.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Ashton. I've got two additional speakers. I'll take those and then I'll ask the officer to respond to them. The next speaker is Councillor Brailsford, followed by Councillor Renshaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the final slide that Mark put up was the access onto the A1. I know that stretch of road quite well. It's a very busy part of the A1. In fact, the A1 between Grantham and Stamford is busy, as we know. But that particular area is. Now, as you access onto the A1 from that junction, there is reasonable visibility if you're going to go north. And the only problem I have is that these HGVs take quite a while to get up to speed, and traffic does plough along there at least at 70 miles an hour, to the effect that they've had to put monitoring cameras in to do an average speed check along that area because of excessive speed in the past. So I am concerned about that junction. I think to go north is possible. I think to go south, it's going to cause loss of life. I don't say that lightly. And I say that on the basis that at Great Ponton, just up the road, where you can cross the A1, there's been some very, very serious fatal accidents over many, many years. I personally, it's a personal view, that we shouldn't be crossing the A1. But so again, we've mentioned 106 and we've mentioned Section 30. I'm not qualified to speak on the legality of those. However, I would say that if this goes ahead, I don't think for 1 second it would be safe to allow HGVs to access the A1, cross the A1 to go south. There would need to be something to enforce that HGVs go in the northerly direction, even if they have to double back at the, I think it would be the A607 would be the first opportunity they would have. but I'm not totally convinced that's the right road to do it on. So they're my concerns. I mean, obviously, I can't comment on whether there's a need for the limestone or not. That's not something I don't think that members we really qualify to speak about. But when it comes to safety, I think the access onto the A1 is absolutely paramount. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 additional people wishing to speak. So what I'm going to do is take, as I said, the first 3, offer it to the officers for a comment, and then continue with the next 3. So my next speaker is Councillor Renshaw.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I too share Councillor Balesford's concern. I've accessed that junction over many years and egressed it, and it is about the speed of the vehicles coming up on you very quickly. And vehicles, HGV, do take a long time to get started. I would furthermore support his view that there should be no crossings like that on the A1. We've spent millions of pounds further on in Grantham across the A1, and here we are acquiescing. The Highways England, irresponsibly in my view, are acquiescing to crossing. That was one point, Chairman. On the item about dust and mud, I do have concerns about who will enforce the compliance with the dust and arisings that come onto the highway network. In real life, they are a problem all the year round, and they are dangerous. And the last point is, it is on item 30 on the prescribed routes for HGV access to and from the site. I think as time goes on, the Highways Authority will have to drive routes, but if we're going to have a development in the rural areas, to utilise prescribed routes for the safety of residents. Because if an HGV comes down that road, and I've travelled that road many times, then vehicles do have to give way. Somebody has to give way to let the vehicles pass in an opposite on the onward direction. And it is supposed to be a twin carriageway, and in reality it will not be. So I'd be interested to know who's going to do the prescribing of the route. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. So I'm now going to invite Mr. Willis to comment with regard to those 3 questions.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So with regard, as I said, to the routing, the Highway Authority, both local highway authorities, so the County Council and Highways England, are responsible for the A1 in particular, have been invited to comment and have raised no issue with regard to the routes in and around the area that have been identified as possible alternative routes for the traffic to take. Notwithstanding the concerns that have been raised about the traffic point, particularly the junction on the A1, they've raised no issue to the numbers. It also should be remembered that the traffic won't necessarily all use that junction because they are at liberty to perhaps use on some of the alternative routes in that area. So, for example, travelling further south, down Skillington Road, along the B676, and then heading out towards Colsworth, which actually has a flyover arrangement, a roundabout, which provides access both north and southbound. There's no restriction or impediment being proposed as part of this. It would prevent traffic utilising those routes as an alternative. So it could be that through the traffic management plan, we look to, perhaps envisage that traffic going south would utilise that as an alternative, as opposed to the A1 junction on Crabtree Road. If I may, Chairman, I'm just going to bring a slide up, if that's okay. It might just facilitate in people. I don't know if you can see that on screen.
No, we can see an excellent picture of you at the moment. Oh, we can see a slide now. Excellent.
So this is an aerial photograph.
Yes.
I've just Googled this just to try and expand on what we've presented, but and I'm not sure you, unfortunately, will be able to see my arrow moving on screen, but okay. You can. Okay, so this is the site here, and this is Skillington Road. So as you can see, there is a potential for traffic to come across the B676 and use this flyover arrangement for going both north and south as an alternative to the Crabtree Road junction, which is here. So there's a number of routes that are available and feasible to be used and would look to be formalised through the traffic management plan. I will just come out of that. So we'll be back on screen now. Yes, the principle is we have no objection from the highway authorities with regard to the routes, and a traffic management plan would look to provide some further clarification on the exact routes, but there's no in principle objection to the use of those. In terms of the need argument, I'll just quickly pick on that. It is actually addressed within the report, but as I say, the difference here is planning permission exists and the reserves are therefore permitted. So whereas if it was a brand new quarry without planning permission, the county are at liberty to look at whether or not there's an actual quantitative need for limestone resource and therefore refuse applications. In this instance, that's not the case. The minerals are there, they are consented, and this is more about controlling and way in which the site is operating and worked. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So I'm assuming that everyone's happy with those, so I'm going to move on to my next three speakers. Councillor Corey.
Chairman, sorry, could I just interrupt? Can Caroline probably mute her screen? And we can see her all the time. Thank you.
Can you? I can't see her. Okay, thank you for that. It would be useful for people if they are not speaking to basically mute their screen, turn the video off. Councillor Renshaw, you wish to come back?
Thank you, Chairman. Mark hasn't answered my question on the monitoring of the dust suppression measures and the emissions that come off site, such as wheel washes and that sort of thing.
Okay, Mark, can you come back on those, please?
Yes, sorry, apologies for that. So with regard to dust management, there is a condition again requiring a dust management scheme to come in, which would provide details of what further methods would be used to control that. Similarly, there are conditions that I say deal with a restriction prevention of mud being brought on the highway, plus a wheel wash. Like all quarries, we have a regular monitoring regime on all sites across the county. So we carry out regular site monitoring visits. We also have an enforcement team. So if there was proven to be any breaches to those schemes or conditions once in place, then obviously then the authority has powers, therefore, and tools to potentially look at taking action. I say the key thing, I guess, on this is that this is exactly the point why this review process is in place. The conditions and the permissions as they stand at the moment have probably 4 or 5 conditions on them. This is modernising the operations, putting controls on what we'd reasonably expect, and therefore giving the tools that the authority might need to take in the event of any issues.
Okay, thank you for that. I will apologise, I have got some building work ongoing at the moment, so if there's any background noise, it may be me. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about it, so I don't know if anybody can hear that. So I'll move you on then. I have the next 3 speakers, which are Councillor Corey, Councillor Overton and Councillor Austin, in that order. So Councillor Corey, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Councillor Ashton that the principle for mineral extraction on that site was established many years ago, and that the extraction of reserves are permitted. I do, however, still have very real concerns on the use of the A1. I know we've heard from Mark that the traffic management plan can stipulate that HGVs use it. I think he said it was the A151, and that enforcement can ensure that route is used. But how often will it be monitored, and what impact will that have on the people who live on that road? If all traffic is going to be funneled down that road, are the people along that road trying to get in and out of Colsterwood going to be adversely impacted? And I know that the principle for extraction is established, but I still do have concerns. I think he said 22 vehicles leaving that site daily. That's actually quite a lot for a village of that size. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Overton. Yes, I can just hear you.
It's got to do. Thank you. A couple of things, if I may. Firstly, the timescale. It seems incredible, but I know the officers are saying it's true. But it's amazing to find that a decision made 60 years ago can suddenly be reopened now. And that's why, lives have moved on, houses bought and sold. So I'm wondering about the timescales of this current permission and these conditions. In the documents, it does say about if the works were finished early, then the process of restoration should begin early. But it doesn't have anything about, is this going to be just any time they like? In 100 years' time, they could reopen it. So just a question about the legality of how that can work, and whether there ought to be something in the conditions this time that give a timescale to it. Secondly, I'd like to support the comments made about the traffic management plan. I think that's clearly going to be a very complicated thing, and clearly we need all of the parish councils engaged in that. And I would like to see something put there to make sure that it's actually upheld, whether that's a or whether there's some monitoring to make sure that people do comply with the monitoring of the management with the management plan. That would be one way or the other. I think just making sure that that's it. And so I'd be interested in the officer's points on that. And thirdly is about the point about the restoration. It does say in the documents that no material will be added inside, but they are taking out many tons, I put the figure there, of the rock. So, and then it's got to be restored. So presumably that leaves a big hole. So how does that work? Are we talking about filling it with water, or what happens to a big hole if no material is allowed to be brought back on site? So just interested in how that restoration plan works. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and then next, Councillor Mrs. Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll pick up the most recent one first. I'd be interested to hear the officer answer to that one. And I think probably now I am echoing previous comments. I am most concerned about vehicles having to cross the carriageway of the A1. I have done that particular one, but that's not the junction I'm most familiar with. But I know at the Ponton one, it's so dangerous, and I'm never happy with any fast road where you have to cross the carriageway in order to turn right. So if there's any way in which we can, even if it has to be an advisory route, as I'm not happy with that particular issue. I think the other issues really are covered by the conditions. So thank you. I'll just wait for the comment then regarding the restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Willis, if you'd like to come back with the answers to those three people, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so in terms of time frame, this is governed by the legislation itself, and you'll see, if I can refer members to page 85, condition 3 of the report, you'll see that there is an imposed time frame that's already set, which is till 21st February 2042 for the winning and working. That's set in legislation. That's just the nature of the legislation that was put in place in the 1990s. So there isn't a definitive end date, and that's what it is. Obviously, operations could cease prior to that, should they work it out in advance. But that's the time frame. In terms of restoration, it is progressive, and in terms of the design, as I say, it is low level. So yes, it is a limestone quarry. There will be working at depth. The permission again doesn't allow for any importation of material at all, and that's the parameters upon which this decision would have to be made and stand. So the restoration design is to low level agriculture. Not dissimilar. You can utilise some of the wastage off the site, so some of the stone that's fines that aren't usable, and a large proportion. I think if you look at the report, you'll see that I think 3.1 million tonnes of limestone is expected to be extracted, but around 1 million of that is going to be wasted, so that utilises restoration material. The other point I still think, again, this issue with the routing really, just to say that the routes that have been identified in terms of access to the A1, as it really stands, are principally, I guess, two, if you take into account the restrictions that might prevent other routes, would be the A1 Crabtree Road Junction or the 676 to the south on Colsterworth. The application, the TA, the traffic assessment's been done, has looked at the utilising and splitting the traffic around those routes, and the traffic management plan that we're seeking to secure through the condition would effectively just firm up the proposals around effectively those routes. It's not been felt necessary to prevent any one of those particular routes being utilised by way of either restrictions on a 106 or a traffic regulation order, because both of those routes have been deemed suitable given the scale of the operation. So the traffic management plan, in effect, will give further clarity around those routes and can potentially give an indication as to preference to which one. But what it wouldn't necessarily do is prevent entirely those routes being utilised, because that wouldn't be appropriate. It would be a traffic regulation order if that was necessary, or a 106 if it was felt deemed necessary, and in both cases it's not. So I don't know if that answers the question, Chairman.
Oh, well, I'm just looking at my chat channel now to see if any of those three speakers want to come back. And I'm seeing nobody wishing to come back. I don't.
Councillor Renshaw, Chairman.
Sorry?
Does Councillor Renshaw want to come back?
No, Councillor Renshaw came back to the previous set of questions.
Thank you.
So that's no problem there. So I'm seeing nobody else adding to the channel with regard to chat. So I'm looking for a proposal from somebody in the committee. So
I think Councillor Ashton's already proposed, or he's minded to approve it, Chairman.
Minded to, but I'm still waiting for somebody to come back. So Councillor Ashton, you were minded. Councillor Tom Ashton, next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Having listened very carefully to the debate, I'm satisfied that and happy to move the paper with the recommendations included.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to the debate and listened to the officer's point of view with quite a lot of care. I'm quite happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask the committee if there's any other proposals. Time taken, so I'm therefore going to offer it to the vote. I'm going to do a roll call with regard to this, starting off with Councillor Austin. For or against, please?
For.
Thank you. I will vote for. Councillor Ashton?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brailsford?
For.
Councillor Corey?
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper? Are you there, Councillor Cooper? I'll come back to you in a minute. Councillor McNally?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Overton?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper?
For.
Councillor Reid?
For.
Councillor Renshaw?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner?
For.
Councillor Storer?
For.
Thank you. I will go back to Councillor Cooper. Are you there? Just check away from my chat channel. Okay, I'm not receiving a message in either direction by Councillor Cooper, but I think on the basis I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I've got 12 people for. It would therefore be carried anyway. So I have an abstention, I believe, and nobody against. So therefore that one is carried. And the report as printed is Accepted. So I'm now going to move you back to item 5, which is the traffic items, and we'll go back to item 5.1, which is Crowland, which was the proposed experimental order to prohibit traffic improvements on the A16B 1166 radar junction, the A16B 1040 junction, and the A16 southbound lay-by. Now, I believe we have Jan Gibson somewhere in our presence, and I hope we can communicate with you, Jan. Are you there?
I am, thank you, Chairman.
Excellent.
Can you see my presentation?
I'm just fiddling with my screen at the moment because I'm all over the place at the moment. I'm looking hard at bits and pieces.
I can see it, Chairman, if that's any help.
Excellent. Thank you. So, yes, so proceed if you can then, Jan.
Thank you. Members will remember the report on this matter back in March. Just a reminder, here's a slide from that report. Describes the restrictions which would prohibit movements across the junction with the A16 and B1188 radar junction, and also prohibit movements to turn right in and out of the side roads, except for that at Hull Drove. Should this scheme go ahead, it was considered that the impact on the junctions further south would be high, and as it's a similar arrangement, it's proposed to impose the same restrictions at that junction with the B1040 also. Since 2010, when the bypass opened, there have been 21 personal injury collisions at Radar Junction, 3 of which have resulted in fatality. Following an informal consultation on these proposals, many objections were received with concerns over the impact on local residents, businesses and farmers, and the severance and inconvenience which would result, as well as increased cost in terms of time and fuel bills. Members attended the site on the 13th of March and requested clarification on a number of points which have been covered in this report. 3 recommendations are to either introduce the scheme for 6 months to gauge its effect on collision data, to abandon it on account of the potential impact on the surrounding communities, or to investigate the possibility of a reduction in speed limit in the vicinity of Radar Junction in an effort to reduce accidents. Any new limit would still be subject to the criteria set out in the County Council's speed limit policy being met. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you can stop sharing your screen, please. I must say I'm very impressed with your IT skills.
Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm now going to open it up to speakers. Would anybody like to comment with regard to this? Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Chairman. I'm really pleased to read in the report we've got the consideration of a speed limit, and I appreciate there's an awful lot of work between the local ward member, officers, and many other people besides has gone into drawing up the proposed experimental traffic order. Having had the benefit of being on that site visit and watching the traffic moving around those junctions at the different locations, as well as taking into account the views of local people that use both of these junctions on a very regular basis. I think it's been a useful exercise to look into the experimental traffic orders, but I'm not convinced that they are the right solution in this place. In fact, they will probably do as much harm for people using those junctions locally as good that they would do. So having looked carefully at the suggestions of a speed limit, which looked to be doable for a much reduced cost, I would move recommendation C on our papers, that we proceed with investigation into potential speed limit reduction as outlined on page 16.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pepper, you've indicated you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just can you see me? Because my screen's just gone funny.
Well, I can see you, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to say at the outset that whilst being lobbied prior to our meeting on the 2nd of March, I haven't been lobbied at all prior to this meeting. And I'd also just like to say thank you to those members that travelled all the way to Crowland on the 13th of March for the site visit. You may well remember me telling you that I received a complaint regarding the Radar Corner Junction just about every day since becoming a county councillor in 2013. Coronavirus has had an effect because I haven't received a single complaint since the COVID-19 crisis started. You'll be pleased to know I haven't got too much to say on this occasion, Chairman, because my thoughts and stance hasn't changed since our meeting in the council chamber. And just to recap on a few points, I'll try and make it as simple and straightforward as I can. A feasibility study was carried out for the best situation at the junction, and it came out as a roundabout. However, there isn't sufficient funding sloshing around for a £2 million roundabout. That £2 million figure has now increased to £4 million, so it's clearly become even less likely. Then we came up with an idea for an experimental order costing around £80,000 for what may only be 6 months. However, committee members received a barrage of objections to this from the public, Crowland Parish Council, South Holland District Council, district councillors, National Farmers Union, Road Haulage Association, local businesses, etc. I could go on. And indeed, our highways professionals stated there are concerns that the scheme will lead to a potential rise in collisions elsewhere on the network and also on other parts of the A16. And also it cuts off 2 of the 3 entrances into Crowland. It's because of those comments from highways that there is potential for rising collisions on other parts of the network that I cannot support the trial. I mean, local businesses were struggling prior to the coronavirus outbreak with large garden centres closed, etc. Now they're literally on their knees, and the report in the front of us today says that should the trial go ahead, the severance and financial loss to local businesses and residents is potentially severe. And here we are today faced with 3 options. Go ahead with the £80,000 experiment, abandon it, or look into a speed limit. Chairman, I'm just a little surprised that there's nothing in the report about refreshing the lines and also enhancing the lines and signage. As members saw on the visit that day, several of the lines were worn away, and additional lines and signage would be beneficial to give more clarity and make it safer, because there's a little bit of confusion at that point. I digress a little bit now. I've just got to say it's a little bizarre to the layman that in order to meet the speed limit reduction criteria, that traffic has to be proven to be travelling much slower than it can do rather than faster. That just takes getting people's head around. Anyway, my stance hasn't changed since we met last, Chairman. Because of the red hatching in 2014 and the average speed cameras in 2016, the number of road traffic collisions has actually tailed off. So much so, it was the 46th worst junction in Lincolnshire, and now it is ranked nowhere near so high. So put it into perspective, there are over 50 more junctions in Lincolnshire with a worse accident rate than this one. Yes, everyone wants a roundabout, but we can't have it. So let's look into reducing the speed further, because although speed hasn't been a factor in all the collisions, we're told that the misjudgment of speed is a factor. I'd also like to see it made more user-friendly, without doubt safer, with additional lines and signage. As I mentioned, Chairman, my stance hasn't changed, and I recommend, Councillor Ashton's already recommended that we go for C. I'd just like to say I differ from that a little bit. I'd like to say that C, we abandon the order, and B, I'd certainly go for B and C, which is to abandon the order and proceed with an investigation into the speed limit reduction. And I'd really like to add to that, as a further recommendation, that highways liaise with me, not that I'm any kind of highway expert, but I do see the manoeuvres there almost on a daily basis in refreshing the lineage and adding additional lineage and signs with the aim to lessen confusion. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think there's anything that Jan needs to respond to there at the moment. So I'll go to my next speaker, which is Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the previous two speakers, and had Councillor Pepper not already done so, I would have seconded Councillor Ashton. The value of the site visit was incredible, because it showed us exactly how those junctions are configured. And even as we stood by the side of the road, just having the time, just standing still and having the time to look at the configuration of those lines and instructions, it was really confusing. So I concur with Councillor Pepper. Not only should those faded and degraded lines be refreshed, but I actually think the instructions to drivers should also be looked at. So I agree with the previous two speakers, but please look at the lines and signage at that junction as well, and let's go for option C. Thank you.
Right, I'm slightly confused because Councillor Ashton proposed option C. Councillor Pepper was talking in terms of B and C. So I'm just trying to validate where you are, Councillor Corey. Are you B and C or just C?
Actually, I am B and C, but primarily C. If we're going to have one, it's C. I don't know. Officers can pick the bones out of that one, but primarily C. But if we can have B as well, I don't know. Happy to come back on that.
So, okay. So I'm also just going to check with Councillor Pepper that, okay, Councillor Ashton's now coming back to me via chat saying he's happy to move B and C if needed. So I will come back at a later point to confirm that it will be B and C. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also thought that the site visit was very good. It's clarified things. You were able to see what was happening, made a lot more sense of it. Being very brief, I would support looking at and reducing the speed limit on that site, and hopefully that will make another difference. Thank you.
Okay, and so I'll come back to Councillor Ashton. Yes, Councillor Ashton, you're quite happy to do B and C, yes?
In order to make it clear, I'm very happy to move B and C if that's in accordance with Councillor Pepper.
So we'll therefore amend that you are Councillor B and C. Councillor Pepper saying that he was quite happy to support B and C. I assume, Councillor Pepper, you are prepared to second that?
Yes, very much so, Chairman. Very much will second that, but also need to say about enhancing the lineage and refreshing the lines. That needs to be added to it.
I'm sure that the officers and everybody listening has picked up on the point that there needs to be some maintenance. Councillor Austin, I believe you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very useful site visit. Well, but it's one thing riding it regularly and another thing standing beside it. The thought of that experimental order, I think, was horrendous and certainly wants to be abandoned. Yes, speed limit reduction I would agree with, and also I concur that the existing lineage was very, very confusing. That really wants thinking carefully about. So I think my leaning now is towards the current should we say amendment, or what is currently moved, that we're moving B and C. Thank you.
Okay. Did I hear a speaker in the background coming in? No. Jan, do you have any comments, please?
No, thank
Chairman,
you, Chairman.
sorry, Chairman. Sorry, Jan. Councillor McNally wishes to speak, Chairman.
Right, okay. Councillor McNally's on the back of the list. Okay. So Jan said that she's happy to pursue at the moment. Councillor McNally.
Thank you, Chairman.
personally, I think we've mentioned it in the previous application where it was on. Someone mentioned it on the A1 where you won't want to cross the road, and I think my own view, looking at that, I don't think I'd want to cross that road. I'd be quite happy to close it off. But if the highway said that actually it'll increase accidents elsewhere, then actually you're just moving a problem rather than fixing a problem. So I'm quite happy to go with the B and C. And as far as the road markings are concerned, I would have said there wants to be less road markings rather than more. Simple, because it was just, when you looked at it, it was just so confusing. I think it just needs to be quite simple as anyone can possibly get it. I don't know, I think that'll do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure that Jan's got the comments that whatever markings there need to be refreshed or reviewed at some point in the future. Okay, I have no further speakers, so it's been proposed by Councillor Ashton and seconded by Councillor Pepper that recommendations B and C are supported on this paper. It isn't a choice of one out of the three. We're going to support B and C potentially. I will go for the roll call with regard to this. Councillor Austin.
For.
Thank you. I am for. Councillor Ashton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brailsford.
I didn't attend the site meeting.
Okay.
Abstain then. Okay. Councillor Corey.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper. Okay, I don't believe you're at the site visit, so I will just go past you. Councillor McNally.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Overton.
Not on the site meeting, so I must abstain.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pepper.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Reid. Not getting a reply. Councillor Renshaw, don't believe you're on the site visit.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
For.
Councillor Skinner.
Abstain. I wasn't on the site visit.
Thank you. Councillor Storer.
Abstain. Was on the site visit.
Okay, so on a quick look at this one then, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 people for.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Certainly Mr. Black. Mr. Black, did you have a comment to make?
Sorry, Chairman, just saying unanimous on that, of those members who attended.
So I'm quite happy with that, so therefore that one's carried unanimous. Okay, moving on to 5.2 then, Lincoln A15, South Park Avenue, proposed 30-mile-an-hour speed limit extension. So if I can have an officer introduction, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Next report.
Yeah, we can see your screen. That's excellent.
Thank you. The next report relates to a proposed 30-mile-an-hour speed limit extension on the A15 in Lincoln, South Park Avenue. Following completion of the emergency services hub along this stretch of the existing 40, we received a request for a reduction to 30, which would help assist vehicles coming in and out of the hub. We carried out speed readings at 2 locations. Site 1 we felt was indicated interference with the presence of a junction, so traffic flow was interrupted. So we've taken Site 2, mean speed of 35 as indicative of mean speed. The 35 miles per hour, this lies within 3 miles per hour of the level required in the policy to justify a 30-mile-an-hour limit, and it's therefore classed as a borderline case. So a reduction to 30 miles an hour will be subject to the approval of this committee. The recommendation is therefore that the reduction is approved, so the statutory consultation for this proposal can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if you can stop sharing your screen, please. Excellent. So I'm now going to open it to committee, and where am I? Let's just have a quick look down my list. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to check with officers that I don't know if I have a declaration of interest here, being the executive support member for emergency services. If this request has come from those who run the Blue Light Centre, I just need to check. Could I have some advice, please?
Steve, would you like to comment, please?
Chairman, I'm just wondering whether Jan can just indicate the where the request came from.
Thank you. The request was generated by the Emergency Services Hub.
Okay, so I think that might help Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. To be on the safe side on this occasion, I think I'll abstain on this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Overton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think that we all know this junction, and it is very difficult with those vehicles having to zoom out at speed. I would support the recommendation to go to and propose to go to 30 miles an hour on this stretch. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Renshaw.
Thank you, Chairman. As far as the traffic is concerned, it's a no-brainer. But there is a byproduct of the traffic regulation, or it will improve with the stroke the air quality for the two schools in that area and the many pedestrians who walk down that road. And possibly in the future, that South Park Road might be a cycle lane or cycleway. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second the proposal to reduce down to 30 miles an hour. I think it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brailsford.
I think it's all been said, Chairman. Obviously support it.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper.
Yeah, just to say, Chairman, I know the road very well, and I was going to second, but that's already been done.
Thank you very much. I don't have anybody else in the queue to speak, so therefore it's proposed, I think, by Councillor Overton, seconded by Councillor Rowe, that the report as printed is carried. So I will go for the roll call again. Councillor Austin.
For. Thank you.
Thank you. I am for. Councillor Ashton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brailsford.
For.
Councillor Corey has said abstain at the moment. Councillor
Yes,
Cooper.
thank you, Chairman.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
For.
Thank you. Councillor McNally.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Overton.
For.
Councillor Pepper.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
For.
Councillor Storer.
For.
Thank you. Again, that's a unanimous one, so I'm quite happy with that. With obviously the abstention from Councillor Corey, though, of course. So I'll now move you to item 5.3, which is Gainsborough and Morton Road. We have proposed waiting restrictions on Morton Road. So, Jan, if you want to introduce this one for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The next report relates to proposed waiting restrictions at Gainsborough and Morton Road. The site is next to Queen Elizabeth High School, and approximately 20 buses bring children to the site and collect them after school daily. It was local bus companies that raised concerns with us about parking on the opposite side of the road. The buses tend to park about 5 at a time in the shallow lay-by on the east side.
Can I just interrupt you slightly and say, are you sharing your screen? Because I'm Not seeing it at the moment.
I can see it, Chairman.
Can you? Okay, it might just be down to me then.
Okay.
No, I can see it now. Excellent. Thank you. Keep going, yes.
Yeah, if I show some photographs of this sort of problem that the bus companies are suggesting, that when they're parked up on the other side of the road, parking on the west side causes traffic congestion. It narrows the carriageway, reduces forward visibility, and some of the parking does take place quite close to Vanessa Drive, as shown there. So our proposals involve introducing bus stop clearways on the east side, formalising the existing school keep clear markings as shown in blue, and introducing some additional double yellow lines on the west side shown in red. Some objections have been received, mainly concerned with the displacement of parking further along Front Street into the village of Morton. We believe, however, that there is sufficient road space closer to the school to cater for any additional parking away from Morton Road, and that the restrictions will improve both traffic flow and highway safety. And we therefore recommend that the committee overrules the objections so this order can be made operative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can unshare your screen, excellent. Thank you. I'm now going to look at my list of speakers. And I have nobody wishing to speak at the moment. I do know this stretch of the road quite well, very well in fact, and I would support the recommendation, so I'm quite happy to propose it. I'm looking for somebody else in the background. Councillor McNally.
Thank you, Chairman. Quite happy to second that.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I will therefore offer it to the meeting. Councillor Austin, for or against, please?
I'm for. Thank you.
Thank you. I have proposed it. So I'm for. Councillor Ashton?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brailsford?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Corey?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper?
For.
Thank you. Councillor McNally?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Overton?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Reid?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Storer?
For.
Thank you. That is unanimous. So the paper as printed is carried with no amendments. All objections were overruled. So the next report is 5.4, Caythorpe High Street, again proposed waiting restrictions, and these are pages 35 onwards. So again, Jan, if you can introduce this for me, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Caythorpe High Street proposed waiting restrictions. Following concerns around parking at school start and finish times, we visited the site and looked at various issues, in particular where the high street narrows and the parking creates a bit of some congestion. The proposal we've put forward involves formalising bus stops by bus stop clearways shown in orange, imposing some waiting restrictions in the vicinity of Eastcliff Square where the carriageway narrows to facilitate traffic flow, and also to apply some restrictions at the junction with South Parade, where parking takes very close to the junction and interrupts pedestrians crossing and reduces visibility for vehicles exiting that junction. Excuse me. The objections we have received relate specifically to the South Parade junction, with concerns that reducing on-street parking here will affect the local business just to the north of the junction. However, the proposals to restrict parking here will only affect a small number of vehicles and remove a small amount of on-street parking. It's therefore recommended that the objections are overruled and that the proposal may be publicly advertised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. And if you can unshare your screen, please. Great. So we can now go back to the committee. Do I have any speakers to this report? Councillor Reid.
That's to speak, Chair.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
Yeah, approve.
You'd like to propose it?
Yes, quite happy with that.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Overton.
Thank you. I'm very happy to second that. I know that area very well, and I think it's the right solution.
Okay, I also know the area, quite happy with it too. I don't have anybody else in line to speak, so I'll therefore offer it to the vote. Councillor Austin. Thank you. I am for. Councillor Ashton.
For.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Brailsford.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Corey.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
For.
Thank you. Councillor McNally.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Overton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw.
For. I did indicate to speak, but it's got missed.
Can
Doesn't
somebody
matter
turn the microphone off that's not seeing paper, please? And Rutland plates. Councillor Renshaw.
Sorry, I'm for. I did indicate to speak, but it doesn't matter. I'm all in favour.
Okay, so you are for, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Storer.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous. So I'm now going to move you on to the next report, which is 5.5 Rugby A158 Horncastle Road Puffin Crossing Facility. So Jan, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This final report relates to a proposed puffin crossing facility on the A158 at Rugby. Following a request for a facility, an assessment took place at this area shown here. The photo shows, whoops, something's gone wrong there. The photos show an existing drop curb where the crossing facility has been requested. Currently, a school crossing patrol operates here. The assessment took place last year and gave us a score that allowed a zebra crossing to be constructed here in accordance with the criteria set out in our policy. However, the high traffic flows on the A158 preclude the use of a zebra. So the policy then permits the installation of a puffin crossing subject to the approval of this committee. We have carried out a consultation with adjacent landowners and publicly advertised the proposal with no objections. The recommendation, therefore, is that the committee supports the puffin crossing at this location so that funding for its installation can be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So excellent, you've unshared it, so that's brilliant. From the chair, I'm going to support this, and in fact, I'm going to propose that we accept the recommendation.
Councillor McNally, Chairman, wishes to speak.
McNally wishes to speak, certainly.
I was just going to propose it, but you beat me to it, so I'll second it, Chairman.
Excellent, whichever, I'm quite happy. Would anybody else like to speak to this report?
I've put my call to speak in the chat, and I was actually going to propose your second, so it's done. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I'm switching screens. I've got 3 computers on the go and 3 pieces of paper and a telephone on the go as well in between, so it's quite busy. Okay, so I proposed, Councillor McNally has seconded, giving it fair time, nobody wishing to speak, I'll therefore put it to the vote. Councillor Austin.
For.
Thank you. I am obviously for. Councillor Ashton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brailsford.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Corey.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
4.
Thank you. Councillor McNally.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Overton.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pepper.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Storer.
4.
Thank you. That is unanimous. So I believe that is the last item of the traffic reports. Thank you, Jan, for those excellent presentations. And thank you to the planning officers for their earlier presentations. I think the meeting's gone quite well, exceedingly well, in fact. I don't like to pat myself on my own back, but I think that we've had a good meeting, and I would normally wish you a safe journey home, but today, because we're working remotely, I just wish you a good day for the rest of the day. So thank you, and whenever you are happy to finish recording,
Thank you, Chairman.
the meeting is closed.